Alright, bear with me, this is weird. I know the setup is whack. I know this mic is not very good, but I need to get this done so I can edit it later. First of all, I'll start with how we all know what coffee is. It's a caffeinated plant, grows all around the world. It's one of the most common caffeinated plants in the whole world, and here in the West, when we think of caffeinated plants, we really either think of coffee or like some kind of energy drink, maybe like Red Bull, Monster, Rain, all that stuff. But in South America, it's more common to see people drinking a drink called yerba mate, or in Latin, Ilex paraguayensis. I think I say that right. I'm not quite too sure. Okay, Jaden editing here. I did not realize how bad that mic was. I apologize. I swear it gets better in like 3 minutes. Just bear with it, okay? Please. It sits within the holly family of plants. It's an aquafoliate, and it is also technically an evergreen. So it's most commonly related to about 6 other plants. Not really most recent common ancestor. We don't know that yet, but we do know that like we've just named that most common recent ancestor Elex, hence why all of the ones now also share that same name. Right. So if you're gonna Google it, it's gonna say that it's most related to the Yaupon and Guayusa hollies. But according to this phylogenetic tree I have, it's most related to Elex aquifolium, Elex polynera, Elex latifolia, and Elex asperella. I also have this phylogenetic tree. This one shows ancestors and like where the genus split between all these 6 caffeinated plants or 6 caffeinated species we have now. It's also a good time to show this. This is just a very confusing and very scientific graph showing how caffeine can be synthesized from different starting molecules. Here we can see that citrus does it one way, coffee does it a different way. Coffee and camellia, which is the common tea plant, do it the same way actually. And then Polania, I think is how you say it, and then the other one do it similarly as well. Citrus actually, does it 2 ways, which I think is interesting. Alright, I also have this phylogenetic tree. This one is a little less detailed, but it's useful to see the relation between all of the holly plants. You can see that Vomitoria and Paraguayensis are the most common related to each other, and they are also the only 2 caffeinated ones. And like I showed through that graph, simply put, caffeine is synthesized one way by 3 plants and synthesized one way by 3 other plants. Alright, editing Jaden here. I didn't realize how quickly I was kind of just info dumping that on all of you. Sorry, but not sorry. I'm not going to reformat the video or like re-record anything, and I also think the rest of the video is like that, so just deal with it. If you don't figure anything out, that's not my fault. This leads me into the type of speciation yerba mate has gone through, and is a prime example of convergent evolution, or where 2 unrelated organisms share a trait or ability to do something. In this case, it's the ability to synthesize caffeine, and historically we only know that caffeine and the ability to synthesize caffeine has only evolved about 6 times. This leads me back to one of those first phylogenetic trees. This tree is useful to see the distant relation that all caffeinated plants have, their single common ancestor, as well as their more common uncaffeinated cousins. In this phylogenetic tree, we can see the camellia, the family which contains the common tea plant, as well as coffee and elex, all falling to the same group called asterids. And if we were to swap back to the other phylogenetic tree, it's kind of like a zoomed in version of all the aquafoliales or the elex, or hollies you could say. Okay, this leads me to an obvious point. Obviously, all elex are related and share a common ancestor, yet the thing that's interesting about yerba mate is that it's one of only 2 caffeinated elex. Okay, of course it's one of the 2, and the other is Elex vomitoria. It's also one of the only evergreen hollies, yet this factor doesn't exclude it from being a holly. Just like every other holly, it is a diploid plant, yet it just has that ability to synthesize caffeine. Alright, I'm going to go back to vomitoria because I know you are all stuck up on the name. It's similar to yerba, as stated before, simply because it is caffeinated, and it was originally used in South and Central America ceremonially. Yet something interesting about the ceremony was that it involved the act of vomiting, hence the name vomitoria. I know this history lesson isn't really necessary for understanding yerba as a whole, but it helps give like a broadness to all holly plants and how they're caffeinated. Okay, and this vomiting action was seen by settlers and colonists, and kind of racistly, but not Yeah, mostly in like a racist manner. They were like, let's call that plant vomitory because they vomit when they drink it. But it's unknown whether or not the plant actually had to do anything with this action of vomiting, or if it had to do something with them consuming something else, which actually caused it. Okay, back to yerba. I know that was a pretty long way to say that these are the only two caffeinated hollies and that they're pretty similar. I also forgot to mention that vomitoria is yaupon, the one I mentioned earlier, and yaupon is its common name, I'm assuming. Okay, so as I'm editing this, I'm realizing that like 2 minutes into the video, I said that we're going to talk about the speciation of yerba, and then I completely forgot about that, and then went on a tangent about vomitoria. I think I'm finally getting to that here. There's not any study on the division of these two, but there's slightly different speciation, likely due to allopatric speciation, considering the fact they're separated by the ocean. Right, so yerba is more commonly grown in South America, while yaupon or vomitoria is more common in Central America and North America. And aside from allopatric speciation, we can go a little further, and of course there's going to be a little bit of ecological speciation, due to vomitoria's tendency to grow in tropical, jungly, kind of East Coast weather, since it's more common in Central and North America. Alright, that was a pretty long segue to go back to yerba mate, and for me to say that it has undergone whole genome duplication and single gene duplication, as well as sympatric speciation. And I know it's slightly different, but it has also undergone convergent evolution due to its ability to synthesize caffeine, just like a few plants are able to, even though they're not in the same species, like I said earlier in the video. The reason we know that it went through this type of speciation and evolution is through some recent transcriptome-based analysis of yerba mate. Right. There's one study called Astrid Phylogenic Transcriptome Undercover Morphal Histories and Support. Yep, that one. And then there's another one called 1000 Plant Transcriptomes and the Phylogenics of Green Plants. I did not read either of those, but they're cited here, so I think I need to read them. Right. Through these studies reported an ancient polyploidization event in the Ilex genus about 60 million years ago. This study was based on phylogenomic and synonymous substitution rate. I'm going to put another screenshot of the paragraph here. It's really confusing. I don't really know everything that's happening, but you will get the point through. Alright, here's that screenshot I promised you. I'm Googling it right now. So, synonymous substitution rate, often denoted as K subscript S, refers to the number of synonymous or silent nucleotide substitutions per synonymous site of protein coding gene. In a protein coding gene. So, obviously in the study, that's what they mention here. So, it's based on phylogenomic and the number of silent nucleotide substitutions per synonymous site in a protein coding gene, and that's what the analysis was based on. That's how they found out there was a polyploidization event in the lineage, and they also used that when they looked into like other aquafoliales, which I mentioned in like literally 2 seconds. As well as evolutionary analysis of Latifolia and Polynura, we can see that yerba mate has gone through whole genome duplication. Alright, so I completely forgot to go through... So I completely forgot to go through the advantageous heritable traits that yerba mate has. It's very simple. It just has caffeine. That's it. So yerba mate, like I mentioned before, is caffeinated. Caffeine is a natural insecticide. It's poisonous to most. It's not poisonous to others, but it does, affect them. But ironic enough, some insects, usually pollinators like bees, do actually find caffeinated plants more pleasing, and plants that have nectar that are caffeinated to be better, and they're more likely to return to that plant to pollinate it if it is caffeinated. This again is a little off topic. It's not super yerba mate specific, but it can be applied. Not really, but sort of. I looked into this way more than I needed to, but there are some birds in South America, like toucans and guans, that will digest and feed on plants that are caffeinated, like the guarana. It's a highly, highly caffeinated plant. The thing is that they don't actually digest the seed, and the seed of the guarana has this like coat around it, which doesn't allow the bird's stomach to digest the seed because it can't digest that layer first. So because of this, when they eat the guarana seed, usually they just eat like, they'll eat the whole fruit, they'll digest like the meat of the fruit, and then they'll like regurgitate or like poop out this seed without actually digesting any of the caffeine. I just thought it was interesting that they do still eat a caffeinated plant, but they don't actually digest any of it. This doesn't necessarily mean that having caffeine is not a benefit in this situation, as like if a bird were to eat the holly fruit, it will digest the seed and it will disperse it. It does still help with dispersal, as even though like when it gets eaten nothing really happens, but when it gets pooped out and like replanted and reseeded in the ground, that the caffeine in the seed will disperse in the soil, and it acts as an allopath and will occasionally inhibit the growth of other plants around it, which will increase its ability to grow where it is dropped off and planted. I tried to look into this. I couldn't really find it anywhere. There's nothing that really specifically says that Ilex paraguarensis's fruit does contain caffeine, but if it does, we can apply that logic. Yerba mate hasn't actually really undergone any selective or environmental pressures. According to this graph, as the estimated synonymous substitution rate increases, density of gene pairs actually decreases. Don't really know what this means, but it's helpful somewhere. So, historically, Yerba has not really undergone any pressures. But recently, or like historically as in like throughout like the millions of years, we don't really know if it has, and we haven't like, it doesn't really show signs of having, but like recently, because of cultivation, it is becoming more affected. Like I said way earlier in the video, in South America, it is one of the most common caffeinated beverages. Instead of Red Bull, you'll see people drinking what maize drinks. It does look like lettuce. It's not. Because of its rise in population, obviously there's going to be a rise in its cultivation, and it's also slightly being affected by climate change, obviously. It is affected by certain herbivores and some insects. Some insects are unaffected by its caffeine content, and it doesn't actually act as an insecticide on them. I was reading about it somewhere. There's some kind of beetle that is really common to see in like yerba plantations that like kind of takes over. It's a plant, so it doesn't do anything in a group, really. It doesn't like herd like buffalo. So instead of depending on those types of things, it usually has to depend on seed dispersal and like environmental factors like the climate, weather, whatever. One thing I guess that can be put under like its individual ability to survive is that it does have an ability to create antioxidants, which does help with its survival, but it's mostly reliant on other factors. Additionally, since it is a plant, obviously it's cultivated and planted in like plantations. I don't know if I can find a picture. I'll put one up if I do. But like, you know, obviously they planted pretty close. Plants do like connect and like can send signals to each other. So I don't really know what that can mean. I guess it does help in a group. Like if one is attacked by insects, it will send a signal to the other, alert of the insects, whatever. It might increase its production of antioxidants and caffeine to help fight off that insect. I'm just blabbering here. I don't know if that's actually true, but we'll figure it out eventually. Anyways, what I was saying is that they're usually in close proximity to each other, either in the plantation or in the wild. You know, obviously the seeds won't disperse super far, so it's not like a huge thing. Yerba mate is dioecious, meaning it has female and male plants. This increases its genetic variability. It has also undergone and does like in the past, and now it will continue going through point and chromosomal mutations, crossing over, and independent assortment, and it has also been observed to have sexual dimorphism. Competition environmentally, so since it's a plant, it's kind of weird. There's like environmental competition that it has, and there's also, since it's like a drink and a product, market competition. So environmentally, it usually just competes with other hollies as well as just like other plants, especially now because of its cultivation. Its competition is like risen to be like humans because we drink it and cut it, and like, you know, I don't know if this is the right term, but like based on worldwide market, it does compete against other caffeinated beverages like tea, coffee, and energy drinks. I actually have a ton of Red Bulls in my room right now. Yerba mate usually thrives in subtropic climates, very humid climates, and it benefits from rich soil, partial shade, and constant rain because obviously it's a tropical and subtropical plant that grows in South America, ranging from like Uruguay to Argentina to Paraguay. It usually and normally does grow in 400 to 800 feet altitude, and it also benefits from certain birds and their ability to disperse the seeds. Despite its normality to grow in subtropical climates, it is able to survive in colder temperatures for a short period of time. To wrap that up, it's a really confusing plant that we need to study more. And I'm tired. Goodbye.